What's up, guys? Damian and Bruce at WaterBear College of Music. Today we are asking, are you too old to have a career in music? And I thought I'd ask a man so old that he is as old as forever and older than the sun.
Thank you for that. Seriously, it's a question that I get asked all the time. I'm 51, and the short answer to the answer to that is no. And we'll talk about why now. But I get asked this question by people who are 22 years old,
Wow.
who are frightened that they've missed the boat. This feeling that I've missed the boat is so common, and actually, it's a psychological problem. It's not a real problem. It's something that exists in people's minds. It doesn't exist in reality. Now, I think there's a historical thing here that it used to. And the reason it used to be an issue is that when there were gatekeepers to the music industry, i.e. major labels and A&R people, they tended to feel that obviously the people that used to buy the most records and the most CDs, back I'm talking about early 90s, say, that would be teenagers between the age of 13 and about 17. So there was a thing where people were looking for their own identity. They're separating from the parents. They look for role models, and it would be their favourite bands, and they would buy those records in huge quantities, which is why it's condensed there. However, so that's why the focus was, and I remember feeling it. I was literally 23, 24, and we had big records, and I remember thinking, how long can we keep this up for? Right. Can we make that transition and jump into being an Aerosmith and a Rolling Stones, or will we be like most bands that kind of, whose career comes to an abrupt end? And back then, that's exactly what happened to us. Fashion changed, and we were locked out of the music industry, but we could still sell a gold album, or just about. And these days, of course, what you'd do, you'd celebrate losing your record deal, because it's, you'd be like, oh, great, now we'll be DIY and we'll actually... Yeah,
you've had millions of pounds worth of investment put into you, and now it's given to you as like this kind of business.
Exactly, but I suppose the point today is, as we know, those gatekeepers don't exist, really. Even Simon Cowell, for showbiz reasons, he kind of rather laughably kind of puts himself up as the gatekeeper to the music industry, and it's complete nonsense because we're already in it. Because, as you do every day, you can communicate with your audience.
Yeah.
So we don't need them, And of course, the old music industry that tried to hold on to it all, they live over there now, largely selling back catalogue and the odd record that squeaks through. And most of us exist in a different place as DIY artists, doing record deals when we feel like it or when the time's right, and taking control of our own destiny.
And I think what you've got is you've got fear of, am I too old? Which is perpetuated, but I think there are certain issues.
There are issues,
which of being older than 25, which come with responsibilities, because you might have a mortgage, or when you're at college, you live off baked beans, and you get to a certain age, you go, I don't want to live in a student house, and then I am going to get married, and I have got a child.
It's tougher to sleep in the van.
It's tougher to sleep in the van, absolutely, and so you do have different. Challenges
you do
as time goes by. And there's another thing which perpetuates this age of you need to do it as quick as possible, is also because there is a window now into the world of musicians and everything else, and we are constantly, the amount of times that I'll flick on my Instagram and there's some 13-year-old who's 10 times better than me as a bass player, and I'm like, oh, for God's sake. And so at that point we're looking at, I'm too old, I can't do what he's doing at 13. And so all of this then conjures up this idea of negativity of, oh my God, this is too old. But I think one thing that we've got to do is realize that we are now in an age where we are in control, but it now comes down to being smart, being really clever, and understanding the audience. I think if you are going to try and appeal to 15-year-olds as a 30-year-old,
you're going to struggle.
You've got a problem.
You've got to struggle. Let's break this down. So let's talk about audience first and foremost, because there are absolutely, I'm not going to pretend that this is easy. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it, But audience, know your audience. And our friend Ace from Skunk Anansi has this expression. He says, age entertains age.
Yeah.
And that's, your audience is probably likely to be within 10, 15 years of your age, really. So knowing that allows you to kind of go, write songs for those people, write songs that represent your life. It's going to represent their life, And the great thing as you get older is some things get easier.
Yeah.
One is your audience spend more when they go out on the night.
Absolutely.
Especially if there's a tinge of nostalgia. So ticket prices and merchandise sales tend to be pretty good.
Well, on that note, just hold that thought, because that to me is a key thing. Older people do spend more money.
Yes.
If you look at the stats of last year, the highest grossing touring artist was Ed Sheeran, who made $430 million and played to 5 million people. His average ticket price was $70 to $80 in America per ticket, because he did a lot of world touring. If you look at the Eagles and the Rolling Stones, they played a hell of a lot less gigs, but their average ticket price was $175, almost $100 more than Ed Sheeran.
That curve tends to keep going, as you see with the Stones.
Yeah.
You know, if they're still going in 5 years, then the ticket price will be more.
Yeah.
You know, and we'll gladly pay it. You know, exactly, because we're buying a piece of our past, we're buying nostalgia, you know, and all that kind of stuff. You know, so you know that works in our favour. The other thing that works in our favour is, because it is hard, there's going to be some challenges which we'll talk about in a minute. Your competition drops away.
Yeah.
So for me as a guitarist, when I was 18, the world seemed like it was full of people shredding away, you know, and it was like Olympic guitars post Eddie Van Halen. Everyone had to be really technical. It was like training for the Olympics. In every street corner there was some kind of, you know, like we see on YouTube with you know, young shredders, gymnastic musicians, you know. But as you get older, you realise you're just selling personality and what you stand for. Yeah. So that feeling of competition just goes, which is a great relief, and you're free to be yourself. And I look round now, and guitarists that are my age, I know them all.
Yeah.
You know, there's Pete Friesen, who used to be in the Almighty, and then Luke Morley, and you know, and we all know each other, and therefore, if somebody wants a guitar player that does that thing, then they'll go and get one of those guys. You know.
And there's more of these artists still touring because they can.
Yeah.
So not only can you still do it from your own music point of view, but there's a lot more gigs and opportunities out there, because if you are a Rod Stewart or an Elton John, you're not going to want a 19-year-old guitarist.
No. That's right. I think that the critical stage is going into your 30s, actually. I think if you're still doing this by your 30, you're probably going to be there forever.
Right.
And it's that 27, 28, you know, the pressure of paying your bills is at its height. You might be starting a family of your own. You've got an awful lot of challenges. So let's have a look at that. Yeah. Because what kills careers is not finding an audience. It's as long as your music's good, you'll find that audience, but it's paying the bills.
Yeah.
And I think the old-fashioned way of doing things, where you put all the eggs in one basket and you go, all right, everybody in my band, it's us and the Splitter Van versus the world, we are going to make it. For any band, at any level, that's a recipe for total disaster, because there will come that month when there's a cash flow dip and you can't pay your bills. And what happens is, you've got a baby or you've got responsibilities, you go, well, this is it, I'm going to get a proper job. So modern musicians don't put themselves in that position if they're smart. Yeah,
you're right. So you've got this kind of the baskets of money,
yes.
sort of, all baskets of opportunities, baskets of money. One thing I was going to ask you about this is, where do you think self-awareness comes into this? So, for example,
that's a good point.
One thing when you're 18, 19 is you can get away with sometimes
blind naivety.
Exactly, yeah. I think when you're 30, 32, you know, knowing your strengths and weaknesses, because you can't be that 35-year-old
brilliant point,
wannabe.
Yeah. But I think when you're 18, that blind faith in what you do is a really positive thing. You take the Arctic Monkeys, you can feel that on that first album, you know. It's full of it, you know. But when you get to 30, and it's a real problem, because I know a lot of old rock dudes that are still thinking that somehow they can make it in that kind of Anvil type way. Yeah. But you've got to be objective enough to look at a scene and assess it. You've got to say, well, if I'm doing that type of music, the audience is this big in this country. So that equates a few pub gigs. And there's that kind of, it's just a research and common sense. You've got to work out how the scene work and who does what. Otherwise, you've just got a bit of a crazy pipe dream.
And so I've got a few people I talk to who are kind of in their 30s, do have a lot of wobbles. This question does come up. Am I too old? Maybe I'm not good enough yet, and I'm too old to get good enough.
Yeah.
So with the self-awareness going into getting improvement and continued improvement, what are the areas you think, if you are 35, not saying you've had a career and you're still going, but you are in this singer, songwriter, musician area.
Sort of semi-pro kind of.
Yeah, how can you then say, look, what's the bits I'm good at? What's the bits I should be working at?
I think your first job is to take the heat out of the situation.
Right.
Because another thing that'll kill a band or kill a project or kill your will to live actually is making this pressure cooker.
Yeah.
This has got to make it in this next year, otherwise I'm gonna, and it can make people really, really miserable. So you've got to just take the heat out of it and organise some income stream so you've got some money coming in a relatively easy way, hopefully with music. But if you have to get a day job for a couple of days a week, some flexible work, do it, So you've got to be kind of able to be patient.
Yeah.
And then you've got to look at your music and start to be objective about it. With objectivity becomes raising standards. If your band or your music or your solo career feels like you're wading through treacle, it's probably because it isn't quite as good as you think it is. And I've done it myself, same as we all have. When I've made every record I've ever made, whilst I've made it, I've thought it was the best thing that's ever been recorded.
Yeah.
3 weeks after I recorded it, I thought it's absolutely terrible, and Objectivity comes about 2 years later.
Right.
Go, do you know what? There's some fairly good stuff in there, and some stuff I wished I'd never done. So the more objective you are, and again, it comes down to you have to surround yourself with good people who know their stuff. So a real big influence on me was Luke Potashnik, who produced the last single we released with Colour of Noise. And he showed me a new way of looking at music, and commercially it was good. It was a really good radio record. And without that extra objective, the right producer in that case, the right manager, the right producer, which we talk about a lot.
Bringing in
Mentoring,
the right mentors.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I think the point for me is the bit you brought up. As soon as you said take the pressure out of it,
yes,
you can see how that would help. We know loads of artists, probably 40s and 50s, that have just been going for 30 years, and their idea of success is, well, I get to make a record once a year, and my fan base buys the record, and that leads me on then to do a tour, which I really, really enjoy, and I get to meet all the fan base, which then goes round in circles, and some years is better than other years, and it's an ongoing kind of process without this, if I don't get success, because what is the definition of success at any age, let alone at 35? Then
well, that situation that you've just described it's a form of madness, because some of the most unhappy people on the planet are some of the most successful, in inverted commas, and actually, if I look at the gigs I've done, from perhaps a local gig in a pub in Brighton to Wembley Stadium, the difference of enjoyment and enjoyment in music is no different between the two. If you play well, you enjoy it.
Yeah.
If you play badly, you don't.
Yeah.
It's the idea that it would all be sorted out if I'm working and touring and making records at that level. It actually, what success is more human activity condensed.
Yeah.
So it's more problems.
You always used to say to me as well is, what's interesting is always the what next. So if you're playing pubs, then you're not going to be happy until you play clubs. If you play clubs, you're not going to be happy until you play sort of sports halls, and that carries on going unless you get to U2 and you're playing the biggest places. Even
then, the challenge of these big artists, they've got to maintain their career. The result is unimaginable pressure. If you're going to overthink it and feel it, it's a bad place to be. And I'll give you a couple of examples of instances of that. When Little Angels had the #1 album, it feels great for a day. The next day, it's like, well, what now? Obviously, what. So a good thing becomes a pressure.
What was the thing at that point? You just had a #1 album. You had your celebration. You wake up with a hangover, and then you have that meeting of what do we do next?
What do we do now?
What was the answer then?
Well, the answer was to now we've got to try and break America. But meanwhile, of course, back in that era, Kurt Cobain's releasing Nevermind. Fashion's changing. The music industry is becoming kind of wiped clean in a kind of way. A punk-like thing happens every 10 years or so. So we were part of that. You could feel it. We've been pushed off the table while still having the #1 album. Well, let me give you another example. When when Cooler Shaker had Hush came out single, and we were watching the band, and our colleague Kevin Nixon was managing the band, and they thought it was going to be number one. I think the midweek might have even been number one.
Yeah, and then it dropped.
And then it was dropped to number two.
Yeah.
So I rang up to congratulate them, and everyone was disappointed. It was like a morgue,
Yeah.
and it was like, you can't win. If it's number two, you want it to be number one. If it's number one, it's like, so you've got to just grow out of all that stuff and go, my life is going to be in music, and I'm going to construct a life that works for me, that's sustainable, and that is success.
Yeah, defining success, taking the pressure out of it.
Yeah, and you can do it at any age. And the point of Colour of Noise, my band that I put together when I was 47, was an experiment to see if it could, see if I could start a new band, essentially. And it worked great, and it plugged me back in with all the crowdfunding sort of things, and lots of old friends in the business, lots of new friends, lots of new bands. And the singer from Little Angels, Toby, same age as me, he started a new band more or less when he was 50, right. Wayward Sons. It's done amazingly well.
Yeah.
So I think it's taking it sequentially. It's take the pressure off, patience.
Yeah.
Know that you've got all the time in the world. The most important thing is for you to deliver that one song really that changes everything.
Yeah.
One song can change everything overnight. And it's not about having a good song, it's about having a really great song.
And then just enjoy the process.
Enjoy the process, whether it takes 5 months, 5 minutes, 5 years. Enjoy the process and make it sustainable, and be patient.
So there's your answer. The answer is...
Be happy.
You can be an old fart.
There's one other thing I would add as well. We deliver a work-based learning masters at WaterBear, and one of the things I really believe in with the masters is that you can take this real-world activity, and it's our job to shine a light on those transferable skills, because the time and effort you spend managing a creative project, whether it's a band or a video company, is never wasted. Because if you can thrive in the creative industry, you can thrive anywhere. So the masters is all about taking your professional work and writing it up, so you can get a piece of paper for all those sleepless nights in a transit van going around the country, because you are learning really important skills. So if you're interested in that stuff, contact us at WaterBear, like and subscribe for more videos like this. We're doing it week in, week out. It's a dirty job, but someone's got to do it.